after they moved in, it began. George and Kathy's bedroom. The eyes at the window. The sewing room. So many flies. Get out. Get out. You will believe. The Amityville Horror. Rated R.
Welcome back. I'm Pat, that Halloween movie collector, back with another That 70's movie review, and of course it's another horror movie, another horror classic from 1979, The Amityville Horror. Based on the book by Jay Anson, directed by Stuart Rosenberg, and the screenplay by Sander Stern. Tells the story of the Lutz family who move into a house in Amityville, Long Island, and unbeknownst to them, in real life, there was a real-life murders by Ronald DeFeo. The DeFeo family, he murdered his entire family, went to jail. Actually, he recently died. I think within the last year or so, he passed away. In jail, of course. Killed the whole family, and then eventually this Lutz family moves in, and they claim that there was all sorts of hauntings by spirits, either from the DeFeo family or the house is just haunted. And of course, book was written about it, turned into a movie, and it's just a classic. It's been remade. The remake was, but the OG with the late great Margot Kidder and James Brolin, Rod Steiger is just a classic. Basically, story goes, Lutz family buys the house, this beautiful house in Long Island. I mean, you see the house, all the houses out there right along the water are ridiculously expensive and beautiful. I mean, it's got a boat dock and everything. And the price was a steal. They were even saying, wow, this is a steal for what they're getting. So George and Kathy Lutz buy the house. Now, she has 3 children from a prior marriage. He has no children. So now it's going to be the so-called blended family of, him being the stepfather and caring for her and her 3 children. So it seems to be going all well. They move in, painting, nothing too out of the ordinary from the very beginning. But what happens is Kathy has a priest, Father Delaney, played by the late great Rod Steiger, come to bless the house because she's very involved, very Catholic, and she's very involved in the church. So she wants to have that. A lot of people do that. I remember we didn't have it for my second house, this house. First house, we had priests come and bless it. That's what you did. I don't even know if people even really do that anymore. So he comes and he sees they're all outside playing and having a great time in the backyard. So he goes in there himself, think, all right, let me get started. So he goes upstairs and he's starting to set up, and he starts seeing these flies everywhere. And they're just like swarms of them. They start to start landing on him, and he starts feeling this crazy, like a weird presence. And then all of a sudden he hears a voice that says, "Get out." Now, first of all, if I heard a voice that said, "Get out of a house," I think it was the old Eddie Murphy, one of his stand-ups, that said, "I don't understand why people stay in the house. When the ghost tells you to get out, you get the fuck out." Yeah, I would get the hell out. But it says, "Get out." And the door's opening, and he's leaving. He goes outside. He gets violently ill, and he leaves. And then she's wondering why he never showed up, and calls and said, "Oh no, he did come out there, and do everything." And she said, "No, he did not come out here." So there's all that confusion. So over time, George, he works a lot. He's very overworked. He's got a construction business, and he becomes very aggressive and violent and just not himself. And he starts to, for some reason, he keeps waking up every night at 3:15 a.m. And that is supposedly when the DeFeo murders happened, the real life murders. So he wakes up, and his biggest concern is having the fire going downstairs. He's constantly chopping wood. He's just very detached from Kathy and the family, and he's just very very mean to the kids. It's just his whole personality has changed since they moved in there. And all while during this is happening, the one younger daughter, Amy, all of a sudden has an imaginary friend named Jody, who talks to her.
She tells me things too.
Yeah, like what does she tell you, huh?
She tells me about the little boy who used to live in my room. He got hurt, And he died.
And so Kathy's obviously noticing that, and she said, "Who said? Well, I'm talking to Jody." And of course, Jody's telling her not to tell her certain things. And even one night where she goes in there, she says she's talking to Jody, and she looks out the window, and she's like these evil eyes, and it freaks her out.
She went out the window.
She went out the window.
Well, I better check and make sure she's not still there, huh?
Creepy, creepy shit. Like I said, if this was me, I would be out of that damn house. I don't care. So that whole plays in, and you see while she's talking, sometimes you'll see her little rocking chair rocking because that it's making it move. And it really escalates one night when they go out and they have a babysitter watching Amy, and the one babysitter, the malevolent spirit, locks her in the closet, and she's crying, she's freaking out, and to the point where she's bloodied her hands because she's banging on the door. And of course, George and Kathy come home, and they're like, why didn't you let her out? Because she's just completely a mess. She's all distraught because she couldn't get out. And what does Amy say? Well, Jody said don't let her out, and she said I didn't do it, and she kept, nope, Jody did it. And of course, they don't believe that, so it just is this whole thing, and that's just another example of all the weird shit going on. Now, during this, the priest, Father Delaney, does make attempts to reach out and say, hey, I did come, but every time he does, it's like he can't get through. There's weird things that happen, like the phone is just all staticky. It's making the evil spirit's making every attempt to keep the priest away. So he just fails on all those attempts, including one where he was actually driving out there, and the car, it was like possessed. It almost caused an accident to kill him because it just didn't. Wants to keep him away from the house. Now, during this, of course, with all that's going on with George, he becomes a little detached from the business and tends to not be showing up. And his partner Jeff, his wife Caroline, is claimed to be a psychic, so he's telling him all the weird shit going on. She comes over and she goes downstairs, and there's this whole bricked wall downstairs, and she's freaking out, saying it's the portal of hell, and she had to get the hell out of the house. It just freaked her out, so she obviously picked up on something.
It's the passage to hell.
And the dog, the whole time, their dog is and when even downstairs, there's all scratch marks because several times that their dog Harry has gone down and scratched that, because how dogs are, they always sense spirits, so that he senses something's going on, and he's always scratching and crying down there. So it said very evil shit. So, and you find out why, because Kathy does the smart thing. She goes to a library and tries to find some research on the house, and finds that it was built on a Shinnecock cemetery or sacred land, Indians, and there was like a Satan worshiper that lived there, whose name is escaping me. Hold on one second, I'll look it up. John Ketchum. That's the name that they said was a satanic worshiper that had lived in the house as well. And then she starts seeing the articles about the DeFeo murder, and it happened in her house, and there's a picture that flashes, and it shows who is supposed to be Ronald DeFeo, and it's supposed to resemble him, but it's a picture of James Brolin. It's a picture of George, and she freaks out, and she understands now that he's being possessed by the spirit of Ronald DeFeo. So all this shit going on leads up to a big ending where basically it's supposed to be going to be their last night in the house, and he just loses his shit, and it's pouring rain outside, and she's rushing home after she finds out all this information, and he starts to lose his shit and grabs an axe and starts walking around because he's going to kill the family, because now he's being possessed, supposedly by this Ronald DeFeo. So, or evil spirit, because Ronald DeFeo is technically still alive because he's in jail, but this evil spirit is making him into what Ronald DeFeo was, because I actually believe that was his defense. His defense was he was possessed. So that's where all this plays in together. So she intervenes, and just as he's about to hit her, she just cries, "Please don't hurt me, don't hurt my children." And all of a sudden, he just wakes up out of this possession. And he realizes what he was doing, and he grabs the kid, and they have to get the fuck out of the house. So gets them out of the house because now the house is starting to the walls are oozing blood. The house is getting angry because now it knows they're leaving, and it's freaking out, and you see lightning striking, and there's all sorts of shit going on in the house. So what? He gets them all out. They get into their van. They start driving away, and then of course the one son realizes that who was left behind, the dog Harry, and Kathy's like, no, don't go back. And she's screaming. And of course he goes back to save Harry. Noble. I'm a dog owner. I'd do it myself. Falls through the stairs as he's going down and lands into this big hole that's like basically the portal of hell, and there's like all blood and ooze and shit. And he falls in there, and Harry sees him there, and he's covered in this in blood or black goo in this so-called portal to hell. And he starts biting at him, because he thinks it's this evil spirit. Then all of a sudden, he gets a little bit of it off. He starts saying, Harry, help me, Harry. Then Harry realizes it and actually helps pull him out of that hole. And then, of course, it doesn't want to let him out of the house. And he finally gets out through a window. And he breaks a window and gets out because the door was shut and it was jammed shut, so he couldn't get through. They get into the van and drive off, and it says the Lutz family never came back for any possessions. And of course, a lot of this is embellished from real stories because that's what happens. I mean, it's derived from the book. The book was based on the DeFeo murders and supposedly the Lutz family claims of paranormal activity in there. And they created this, to me, a really great horror movie. I love this. One of my favorites of the 70s. It was just, it's a good, suspenseful horror film, and it builds and builds and builds up to the final act. And all parties in the movie did great. James Brolin was great, as he was very menacing and creepy, especially as he started to get possessed. Love me some late great Margot Kidder. Just loved everything she did. She's in one of my favorite horror movies of all time, next to Halloween. She was in the original Black Christmas. She was great in that, and amongst many other things that she was in. And she even did appear in a Halloween movie. She appeared as the psychiatrist in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. So she did make it into my favorite franchise. So, and Rod Steiger as the priest. And what happens, I'm almost completely glossed over this fact. So he is doing mass, and all these attempts before this were thwarted by this evil spirit. So he's talking in front of up on the altar, and he's seeing there's an image up on the ceiling that starts to crack. And as he's yelling, he's like saying, denounce Satan or what, I forget the exact same words. And he's getting very loud and on, and all of a sudden, like cracks form and pieces of the ceiling start to fall into his eyes and blind him. So he goes off and basically becomes a hermit. And Kathy does look for him and says, I'm looking for Father Delaney. And there's a younger priest that's there with him who's, I'm forgetting what the priest's name is. And he said, Father Delaney is on vacation or whatever, just giving all excuses. And then finally she goes and she sees the younger priest and says, he's gone now, and, you're not going to be able to get in touch with him because now he's basically just living as a hermit. And there is an investigator that's coming around too. The investigator is going around asking questions, and actually goes to the younger priest and wants to know where Father Delaney is. And he's basically saying the same thing. He's on vacation or whatever it was. And then he actually follows him one day and sees that he's sitting with Father Delaney, Rod Steiger, and he's got just staring off into space. He's now become like a mute. He's lost his sight. It's been taken from him. This evil spirit took this from him. So, and the sergeant sees that. So that whole story does play out too. I almost forgot about that. But good movie, great suspense, a couple of good jump scares, some creepy atmosphere, especially, it's a haunted house, technically a haunted house film. So you get the creepy atmosphere in there, and stellar, unforgettable cast. So for me, this movie, so I give smiley faces on that 70s movie review, and I rank the movie from 1 to 5. This one, yeah, because it's got to be, not the only one I've given a 5 to so far is I've reviewed Halloween. That was my last review, believe it or not. Go check it out if you want to. That's a solid 5. This I would give a I'll give it 3.5. And that's not in the middle. It's just a little bit above the middle. Just for the simple fact that I like this movie. But if I go any higher than this, it negates movies that I do like much more than this. But 3.5 is very respectable. So it's like getting like an 8 on a 1 to 10 ranking. But if you haven't seen the original Amityville Horror, go check it out. You won't be sorry. Go watch the remake too. It's not so bad, but the original, in my book, is much better. So go watch it. Do me a favor, hit that like button. Helps people find this channel. If you like reviews, you like horror, you like music, you like all sorts of shit, there's a bunch of stuff here. Live podcast. We do a live podcast every Sunday night, 8 p.m. That horror movie podcast with my buddies Joe and Brett. Make sure we do live watch-alongs. If you like live content, because then you can interact with us, it's fun. The live streams are the best. We do that live movie watch-along every Monday night, 8 p.m., where we watch a movie together and comment over it and just have a ball with everybody in the chat. It makes it so much more fun. It's like watching it in a room full of people. It's just awesome. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Helps a brother out. Don't cost nothing. Any podcasters out there, hit me up if you subscribe. Let me know about your channel. I love meeting other people on other podcasts. We've been chatting with other people on other podcasts that are horror podcasts. And it just makes it so much more fun. Good community of people. So make sure you subscribe. And I'll be back next week with another that 70s movie review. And I keep threatening that I'm going into the 80s reviews, and I just haven't had a minute to do it. But I'm going to hopefully start maybe next week, because there's so many 80s horror movies that I can get into. So, but until then, till next review, talk to you soon.